So what you see with these lawmakers mirrors what you hear from Republican voters who one side completely is pro-Putin. The other side is very traditional Republican. We've got to counter Russian aggression. And so in this new fight, who is going to prevail? That's the big question, looming question that I'm watching in 2023 when Congress resumes.
All right, guys. So we got to talk about MSNBC and the absolute garbage that they're spewing on their airways, which is par for the course for that network. Irresponsible rhetoric is just a staple. It's a hallmark of MSNBC. And they are criticizing conservatives who are not in the neocon wing of the Republican Party, who are against spending more money, sending billions and billions and billions of more dollars to Ukraine with little or no oversight to support another proxy war between the United States and Russia, because that is all Ukraine is for us. It is a proxy war and a long list of proxy wars that we have fought with Russia. And, I don't think we have a great track record of getting this stuff right, right? But hey, if you criticize that, if you say, I got some criticisms, at the very least, I want some oversight over the funds, right? I don't want Ukraine to lose. I don't want Russia to take over Ukraine. But, I think that we got to ask some questions here, particularly about who are we arming, who are we supporting, why are we supporting them, and the ultimate end goal, right? What is the end goal of this conflict? Because I'm going to tell you guys, every time we go into a conflict where we don't have a specified and specific end goal for what we want, it never turns out good for us. And it's almost as if these people just forget history. And the people that do remember history, that do understand that, these conflicts don't tend to go good for us, right? We tend to not get ahead when it comes to these type of conflicts. They pretend like you're anti-democracy and pro-Putin. You're pro-Putin simply for having questions, simply for being suspicious of Zelensky, to say, I'm not necessarily sure if him and the guys that we're supporting here, I'm not necessarily sure if they're all good, right? Apparently that makes you pro-Putin. Okay, I don't like Putin, right? I also might not like Zelensky as well, too. Again, that makes you pro-Putin, right? According to the mainstream liberal media. So I actually want to play this quick segment right here from Joy Reid and her friend, in which they discuss this. They make the argument that people who say America first actually mean democracy last, which again is it's just amazing to me, the context in which they're talking about this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll the clip.
America first, which is what they constantly kind of try to say. What they really mean is democracy last. That's really what they mean when they say America first. It's not about our principles anymore and the narrative and common story that all of us have shared about a constitution and the will of the people and a government by, for, and for the people. It is about an ability to push through whatever you want, by whatever means necessary in this. And so it doesn't surprise me that they're in sync now with Vladimir Putin, who espouses basically the exact same things, which is, I'm going to hold power for power's sake. And it doesn't matter who I run over or what I do or what country I invade. If I can get what I want, that's what I want. That's what the Republican Party has become. It's the least of which it's not anything close to the last two Bushes. But it's a party that they used to claim Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan would be shocked at what's going on.
And he would be run out of the party. He'd be considered a rhino. I mean, he could not. If Ronald Reagan ran today in the Republican nomination, Ronald Reagan would probably finish 5th or 6th in a Republican primary.
Yeah. So according to MSNBC, if you are a conservative, if you are America first, and you say, I would much rather spend $45 billion here in America, right? Like, for example, securing the border, maybe trying to solve inflation, maybe trying to solve crime, building up our own infrastructure, actually fixing problems for everyday American citizens. Apparently that makes you democracy last, right? But being open borders, pro-inflation, pro-high gas prices, pro-lowering your standard of living, which is basically what the Democrats have done ever since they've been in office, right, under the Biden administration. Apparently, that doesn't make you America last, and that makes you democracy first. Even though these people really don't care about democracy, they don't like democracy, they hate democracy because they hate it when Trump won, and they actively tried to overthrow democracy after Trump won in 2016. Yeah, these are the people trying to lecture people on who is pro-democracy and who's not, or pro-America and who's not. right? I mean, I think the most pro-American you can be is to want to support our own country instead of supporting other countries, right? Now, here's the thing. I understand all the arguments for supporting Ukraine, okay? I can go down the list, okay? First of all, we have natural resources, okay? Ukraine contributes significantly to the world's supply of wheat, specifically when we're talking about things like, again, grain, corn exports, in which Ukraine is responsible for 16% of the world's supply, 40% when it comes to the world's sunflower oil. Yeah, I mean, Ukraine, from a certain perspective, when it comes to food, it's important. Obviously, you don't want Russia, who's an enemy, to take over the country and to control certain food supplies like that. Okay, I 100% understand that. I also can understand how this is good for the U.S. in the sense that Russia is doing so bad that, one, it demonstrates how superior our weaponry is compared to Russia, because that is what Ukraine is using. Again, consider it should have been a bloodbath by now if Russia was nearly as strong as we thought they were. Obviously, they're not, and that's what this war is revealing, that Russia's kind of weak, okay? Russia's weak. They're not that strong. That means clearly our intelligence is better, our weaponry is better, and Russia at the same time is weakening, okay? I mean, I can't lie to you. I mean, $45 billion, it's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of the amount of money we spend on defense, and we spent on other wars as well too, like Afghanistan and Iraq, it's a drop in the bucket, especially considering how we're not losing any American lives. It has strengthened our alliance with NATO. Finland and Sweden have started the process of attempting to join NATO because of Russia's actions. And the long-term geopolitical consequences of this invasion from Russia obviously is going to be negative, right? This is not going to turn out good for Russia in the long run. And this kind of shows China that we are more than capable of fighting a proxy war with them if they end up invading Taiwan, okay? And so I get it, right? I get it from a certain perspective that, hey, you know, this kind of strengthens our alliance with Europe. It makes NATO stronger. Russia's weaker. It sends a message to China. But again, my question is at what cost? Is it worth just sending money, a blank check to Ukraine, just because it seems like a deal right now without having an actual end goal or oversight in terms of how the money's actually used? Because again, if the end goal of Zelensky in the United States doesn't align, then where do we go from here? Okay, because Zelensky, it seems to me, at one point he was demanding for Putin to step down, right? He was demanding that in order for him to even come to the table for peace talks, Putin had to step down. So it's clear to me that that guy probably wants to get rid of Putin. Right? How far does Zelensky want to go? Who are these people that we're arming? Who are these people that we're backing? What is their ultimate goal? Those are questions that we got to ask. And the reason why we got to ask those questions is because in the past, when we failed to ask those questions, when we failed to have a solid end goal for what we want to accomplish, it has been a disaster. Okay? Let's say we do take out Putin, right? Or somebody ends up taking out Putin because of the war. Who's going to fill that void? Who's going to fill that power vacuum? Will it be somebody that's worse than Putin or less worse than Putin? We don't know. How has these proxy wars with Russia worked out with us in the past? Like, for example, how did it work out with us in Afghanistan? When we were arming the Mujahideen, who were a precursor to the Taliban, so that they can fight against Russia, right? We were arming them for that in the 80s and in the 90s. And finally, they took over the country. And guess what? Because they were Islamic extremists, and they harbored Islamic extremists who did not like the United States, we had to go back in there again in 2000, 2001 in order to take the Taliban out because we armed and enabled extremists. Now, fast forward 20 years later, the Taliban are back in power because the fake government that we set up in the name of democracy, right, failed. It failed. How did our proxy war in Syria work out with Russia? What do we get out of that? We basically had to withdraw, right? We basically had to withdraw. We basically had to give up. Well, why is that? It's because we have no clue who the hell we're arming, what their goals are. And the fact is that they're extremists. And I can't sit here and tell you with a straight face that the people that we are arming in Ukraine and we're supporting may or may not be extremists who could turn back around in the future and, you know, create issues and problems for us. I'm just saying that's something that, hey, we should have thought about when we, were supporting certain groups in the Middle East, okay, who eventually turned the weapons that we gave them back around on us and caused us a problem. Okay, did we think about what happened or what would happen before we went into Iraq and toppled Saddam Hussein because he had weapons of mass destruction, aka he wasn't going along with the U.S. geopolitical chess game, so we had to get rid of him, right? And WMDs was the excuse, right? 9/11 was the excuse, even though he had nothing to do with 9/11. We went in there anyways. Well, why? It's because we had an old beef, right, back from the George H.W. Bush days with Saddam that we just had to finish up, right? I'm just saying. I am not naive enough to believe that American foreign policy comes from a place of objective good. No, there's no foreign policy when we talk about the geopolitical chess game that comes from a place of objective good. And that's okay, because that's how the world works. But don't lie to me, though. Don't lie to me about it, right? If you're saying, look, we need $45 billion because you know what? We need to send China a message. We need to, weaken Russia. This is an opportunity to fight Russia and to take Russia out without having to spill any American blood. We are strengthening the U.S. position globally, and that ultimately is going to be good for the American people because of X, Y, and Z reasons. You know what? Hey, that to me, at the very least, is a more legitimate argument than, well, you need to support Ukraine because of democracy. Because it's not about democracy, right? I'm not sure if I would characterize Ukraine in the way things currently are when you have, political parties that have allegedly been banned, like opposition parties and stuff like that. I'm not sure if I would characterize that as a shining example of democracy. So again, don't lie to me and claim that you're doing this for some altruistic purpose that is supposed to be objectively good when you're not. You're just doing it because at the end of the day, you feel like it's in the U.S.'s best interest from a geopolitical standpoint when we're talking about, again, the geopolitical chess game. And that's fine, but just be honest and upfront about it and don't smear people who say, you know what, maybe we should stop spending our money playing this geopolitical chess game the way we're playing it, because typically we end up suffering from it in the long term. It just causes more problems. Like, for example, they'll tell us that we need to accept all these immigrants, right, that are coming to the border, okay, that are seeking amnesty because of U.S. intervention in South America. When we were staging coups and stuff like that, putting people in power, right, who weren't exactly good people, right, and that caused instability in these countries in Central and South America. And they say that is what is contributing to these migrants coming up to America today. Yeah, so if that's the case, if we all agree that U.S. intervention in some of these wars in some of these countries in the long term has negative consequences for us, why keep doing it? Who am I to believe that this is going to be any different? Yes, it looks like right now that, hey, this is a bargain, right? This is a bargain compared to how much money we spent in Afghanistan and Iraq and some of these other wars. This is a bargain. We're not losing American lives. But again, my question is, what unintended consequences are going to happen in the long term that we have not thought about? Because these people have not stated an end goal. Is your end goal to drive Russia out of Crimea and the regions they've already taken over in mainland Ukraine? Is that your goal, right? Or is your goal for an immediate ceasefire right now? Or is your goal to eventually take out Putin? What's the goal? What are the consequences of those goals, right? Again, this stuff has not been clearly articulated by the politicians. They really just say, well, if you don't support what we do, then you must be anti-democracy. Forget about history. Forget about the past, okay, in which we have screwed up these type of operations, right? Forget about all that. When we've lied to the American people about what we wanted to do and it ended up a disaster. Forget about all that, right? Just understand, if you don't support us, if you don't go along with our narrative, you're anti-democracy. You're pro-Putin. I'm not sure people are going to buy into that, right? I'm just saying. So, I just want to put that out there because I think that some of these conversations around the Ukraine thing are ridiculous. I understand both sides of the argument. I am just skeptical. I am skeptical of the long-term consequences here because it doesn't seem to me that, the United States government has a good track record of this type of stuff working out. It seems good now until 10 years from now. We're dealing with an even bigger or worse conflict because of some decision that we made here or decided to not really put in a genuine effort to come to a peace agreement with Russia, which could lead us into a nuclear conflict because we're trying to go for the kill, right? We're trying to take Putin out, and Putin may feel desperate enough to say, you know what, if I'm going out, then everybody else in the world is going out with me, launch the nukes. And then we find ourselves in a nuclear holocaust. That's all I'm saying, right? That's all I'm saying. Our politicians, we don't seem to think through the end goal when it comes to these type of conflicts. And we've seen that we have a terrible track record when we don't thoroughly plan out what the actual end goal is. This to me could go a lot of different ways. And I'm not sure if it is worth funding, at the very least, without oversight, audits, making sure the money is going where it's supposed to go, and that we're not just throwing money at a war that, again, could have severe consequences for us if we don't get it right. I have no faith in the politicians getting it right, right? Don't blame me for not trusting these guys. They haven't shown themselves to be very trustworthy recently. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.